FlatsClass fans, Captain CA here, and we are rapidly approaching the holidays, obviously. Many of you are making plans to hit the water. Now, it may look slow on paper this month, but I'm here to tell you, if you know what to focus on, it gets a lot easier. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video today. We're going to go down to the shop. I'm going to show you where the fish are positioning right now, what are the best times, and what lures you can use to leverage a more consistent bite. And besides that, I'm tired of decorating out here in the barn. Let's go. December is ultimately the transition month, no matter where you live. If you're all the way down in South Texas or all the way down into the Florida Keys, it's definitely transition month. Everyone is in winter now. Water temps are definitely in the 50s. Some of us have 60-degree water temps. The bait is pushing deeper. The predators are getting tighter to their winter refuges where they're more predictable in zones that you can find them in. And honestly, this could be the most consistent month of our year where you can get on a really good, solid bite. And what do you think is the number one, I'm going to say, inshore predator that you have the best shot at running into this time of year? We're going to write that down right now. Of course, redfish is the headline act or the holiday MVP this time of year. They're everywhere, and they're one of the favorite targets of fly fishermen and inshore artificial guys big time this time of year because you got low water situations, you've got bright skies most days, and you've got the perfect scenario to sight fish. So where are they? Because they're going to be in groups. Sometimes it'll be just 5 or 6, sometimes it'll be 10 or 12, and sometimes it'll be 24 of them. And I find those zones all the time in the right scenarios. One of those wheres is shallow mud flats. Why shallow mud flats? Lots of times the outside bays or even what I'm going to say oceanside or Gulf side, the water temperature might be very low, 51, 52, 53 this time of year. But if you move inside to a mud flat, that mud flat could be 2, 3, if you're lucky, 4 degrees warmer. If it's 2 or 3 degrees warmer, that is huge for redfish. That's all they need to gain an appetite. Another area is creek mouths. Now, I teach this religiously in FlatsClass University. My inshore school, I tell my guys, listen, if you want to catch redfish on a regular basis when you get November and December and January, all you have to do is focus on creek mouths. Don't go up the creek, don't fish on the outside, fish the creek mouth 100% of the time. Hit 3 or 4 or 5 of them, you're gonna hit one where there's plenty of redfish to catch. Deep creek bends. If you've ever watched some of my episodes, especially one of the ones that we had last year with Captain Chris Herrera in season 19, we were over in Flagler, Palm Coast area. You'll notice a lot of the smaller and medium-sized creeks we were targeting, there'd be these hard bends with current, but they were deep. They were 6, 7, 8 feet deep, and we were having to be patient, even throwing heavier heads, 3/8 and ½ ounce to get the lure down in the tide, but they produced. They've got insulating depth, fish can still feed down there, they feel comfortable. That's a really good play this time of year. And then oyster bars with current. Oyster or lime rock, they attract redfish this time of year. Anywhere you see that harder bottom, that harder substrate, and when it has current, they'll get on the leading edge. Redfish are powerful predators, powerful swimmers. They won't be on the backside of it like a flounder might be. They're going to be right on that leading edge. As that bait comes out of that bend, hits that bar, that mud minnow, that finger mullet, they're going to crush it. And one more thing, this time of year, they will tail. That's right, they still tail in the wintertime. You wait for that nice warm afternoon, 2-3 days after that front. You got that high sky, you got that mud flat warming up. You're gonna see those tails tip up. Let's give you a few lures that you can look at for that scenario. Come on, right now. All right, lures I like to leverage this time of year. Absolutely positively, you already know this, the Z-Man Prawn Stars. It's been phenomenal. If you got a fish, a bottom that has a little bit more rock or oyster, use the unrigged version that you can rig Texas style. But if you get the opportunity to throw some of the smaller pre-rigged Prawn Stars, like the 2.5 and the 3.0 inch, they are unbelievable for sight fishing. I mean, just lights out good. If you get in a deeper curve or a creek mouth, then go to the 3.5. That's a little heavier and it will sink. It sinks because it weighs basically a total of about 1/4, 5/16, and it'll get down to depth. But Prawn Stars, shrimp, because it's one of the #1 forage species all winter long, it's a no-brainer to throw Prawn Stars. Another one, Z-Man kicker crabs. Kicker crabs, if you've never seen one, I don't have one sitting here on the workbench this morning, but if you pull them along, that little claw is like a paddle tail and it just kind of kicks along. It is one of the best baits, especially if you can rig it on a little heavier jig head, or if you're facing a little bit of current where you can keep it just off the bottom and bumping the bottom along. You don't want to run it mid-current. You just want it bumping along that bottom, especially on some of those banks where there's some flow or in front of those oyster bars. It's lights out good, especially the Right Stuff color is one of my absolute favorites for that scenario. Bugs jigs. Bugs jigs are like the Prawn Stars. They just simply catch fish, no questions asked. Anyone who's ever used one, especially those that follow me in Texas, knows how deadly a Bugs jig is. In Florida, we just don't use them for redfish. We use them for flounder. We use them for bonefish. I mean, they catch everything. And it's just an easy bait to present. It has a lot of action even when it's sitting still because it's got that rabbit hair, so it just kind of breathes while it sits there. It's really an unbelievable bait to use in clear water. And then any 4 or 5 inch fluke style bait. They work really good this time of year because a lot of the bait fish after or post front, they'll get that cold stun deal going on, and lots of times, especially when the water's not quite warm enough to get everyone going and everyone's kind of locked down a little bit, if you just pull along a little glidey, fall down, lift up, fall down, fluke style bait, you will find some action. You will entice one of those big rusty raiders to smash it. All right, let's move on to another species that is a big highlight this time of year. Okay, speckled trout. They become much more predictable in December. Now that the water temperature has dropped into the 50s or low 60s, they're not in that fall pattern anymore. They're definitely in the winter pattern. They're looking for that deeper water where they can be a little bit more protected from those cold fronts. So where would you look for them? Because remember, those trout, they don't have the fat that those bigger redfish. Those bigger redfish are pretty robust and their range goes so far north along the Atlantic seaboard. Trout, a little bit more vulnerable. They need that depth. So here's where we're gonna look for them. We're gonna look for them in deeper creek bends. Creek bends that have 8, 10, 12, maybe even deeper depths. They live in those zones, and a lot of the bait, the minnow bait, because they're very vulnerable as well to cold fronts, they kind of sink down there with them. So they've got food there, they've got temperature, insulation there. Deep creek bends are always a play. Where I cut my teeth growing up in Tampa Bay, the drop-offs near shallow flats were a no-brainer. If you had like a intercoastal waterway or some type of trough that might have been man-made that was cut out, that bisected a shallow flat to get access to residential canals, those fish would sit in that 8, 9, 10 feet of water, those trout just lay there on the bottom. But as that sun would come up, those fish would come up that gradient onto that shallow flat. So in the morning, they'd be down in the trough. But by 10, 11 o'clock, they were already moving up the edge. So you could fish those drop-offs and find fish consistently, no problem, before they try to get up on the shallow flat late in the day. Deeper residential canals themselves. You'll find some residential canals that'll run east and west. They're not north and south. Well, that blocks, if you will, a hard northerly wind. So those east-west residential canals are going to be warmer. And then some of those canals will have other attributes to them that make them really well. They get a lot more sun. The sun's more in the south, so it shines on those northern seawalls, on those northern docks. So in that east-west canal, that north side, definitely warmer. And if you see sailboats or trawlers or cruisers or anything in there that gives you an idea, even if you don't have great electronics, that you can be in there and you know that there's 10 feet of water, fish the bottom slow. You will connect with a lot of sea trout, especially if there's an egress out of there to a shallow flat or a zone where they would have a gradient edge to get up and feed on mullet, needlefish, anything small, ballyhoos, things like that. All right, what about lures for speckled trout? A little bit different than the redfish. I'm going to share that with you now. There are a lot of lures in December that speckled trout will just crush. They'll just crush it. But I'm telling you, all you need are these two categories. If you have these two categories in December, doesn't matter if you're a beginner or an intermediate, or even if you're very experienced, your guide level, it will not matter. These two categories just flat out catch them where I told you they would set up and be. One, suspending hard baits. Absolutely no-brainer. Mirrodine, Heavy Dean, 27 MR, Mirrodine XL, those lures, Catch Junior, Catch 2000, any suspending hard bait that has that twitch, pause. The pause, depending on water temperature, depending on barometric pressure, will tell you how long you have to pause. But if you use suspending hard baits, or if you even ever plan on using them, this is the time. Don't think that you're going to save them for spring. December, pull them out, start using them. And it will be, kryptonite to pufferfish that have been crushing all your soft baits. Speaking of soft baits, that's what's next. Any soft bait on a jig head that will give you enough fall to reach the bottom but be light enough not to hurt your sensitivity. So I'm going to say, or give you an example. If you're fishing a residential canal or a creek and the water's 8 to 10 feet deep, you could probably get by with a 3/16 or a 1/4 ounce jig, weighted jig, that you can peg on most plastics. Now, I like to use 4-inch jerk shads. Z-Man makes a scented version. You pick your favorite brand, does not matter. It'll get down there. With Z-Man, because it's buoyant, it will stand up. So it'll be upright where it'll look like a dying or a feeding fish on the bottom, and it'll get noticed. The other one is the 3.75 thick tricks from Z-Man. Those things are amazing. We tested those when they first came out. Z-Man gave me some to give to my members at FlatsClass University, and not one of those guys are not a major fan of that profile. If you want to imagine what it looks exactly like a Mirrolure Little John, which is another amazing bait to throw this time of year. You want action? This is the time you get action on speckled trout. It is December, it's in those deeper zones, and it's pretty predictable. Once you find that zone, you just don't find 1 trout, 2 trout. Keep fishing, you'll keep catching them. Number one thing you gotta understand is you need to slow down. They're not aggressive. They will not chase. They ambush this time of year. Ambush. They sit still. So that lure's gotta be somewhere in front of them. So make those pauses longer. All right, I got one, maybe 2 more, at least 1 more for you. I decided to combine them. Many times as a guide, I'm polling someone around, You know, I target a lot of the marsh country this time of year. It's not so much the outside flats and sandbars and beaches. It's mostly marsh country. So I deal with a lot of mud flats, a lot of Spartina creeks, a lot of oyster. So this time of year, you can run into black drum and flounder while you're red fishing. I mean, they group up. They're basically in the same winter zones as the reds. They want to be on those mud flats when it's warm. They want to be in those creek mouths or behind those big shell bars where there's some current, especially the black drum, because they're just sucking up those crabs like crazy. And they both feed on shrimp. They both feed heavily on shrimp this time of year. And again, remember, that's what I told you was the #1 forage species all through the winter in most creek systems and most mud flats. So it sets up really nice. You might notice that sometimes where you have current in a creek mouth or behind a long limestone reef or something like that, that's where the flounder want to kind of lay in that eddy. Or you might see that big black drum tailing up there. The thing is these fish feed this time of year. They do a good job in cold water. Cold water doesn't bother them nearly as much as it bothers the other two previous species, the speckled trout in particular, or redfish. It doesn't like knock their attitude out. They're still gonna bite. Very reliable, very reliable. Let's talk about a few lures that you might find that make perfect choices for these, and we're gonna cheat a little. #1 thing I want you to take away from these lure choices is they're all lures that are designed to work close to the bottom. When you're fishing for black drum and you're fishing for these flounder, you've got to make bottom contact. Z-Man kicker crabs, a little heavier jig head or weighted Texas style with maybe a little heavier bullet weight and an extra wide gap hook. Keep that thing tight to the bottom, move it slow. You're dragging, you're pulling, you're dragging, you're pulling. You're not really reeling fast. Redfish, even though they don't like to chase, they can be led away from whatever cover or structure they're next to and they will follow. These fish don't want to follow much at all. You either got to put it right here or you just don't catch them. So it's got to be relatively close to the bottom, 6-8 inches off the bottom or right on the bottom. Z-Man kicker crabs, the unrigged prawn star works fantastic. The new diesel kickers in that 3.25 size, very, very good with a little jig head on it. Any of the Z-Man goat profiles, especially the baby goat and the goat itself, they have those swimming appendages. They do a marvelous job. Scent, I put scent there. Goo it up, buddy. I mean, make it look like a Coney Island hot dog and with extra chili and onions. Put plenty of scent on the bait. You're gonna be moving it slow. If there's a time for you to cheat, use it this time of year. A lot of you guys are gulp fans. That would be another choice. Any bait that is heavily scented. Z-Man Elastec is it's an elastic thermal polymer type bait. So it soaks up, it holds mineral oil. That's what gives it its body. So when you put it in like a baggie with 2 drops or 3 drops of ProCure, for instance, if that's what you want to use, and you kind of knead it into the bodies of the bait and then just throw it in your cooler, get out there, put one of those on a jig head or a rigging hook, toss it in the hole and start working it around those bigger shell bars and things like that. You're going to catch everything, but you're definitely going to, if a black drum or a flounder is there, I guarantee you, you will catch them. So, I mean, these are some of the tricks that we use in the month of December when you want to know what's biting. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. And we haven't got those super frigid like we get after the holidays where that water temperature stays in the 50s a lot and gets a little trickier. All these fish got to eat. That's all you have to remember. They have to eat. You just have to make it easy. This is going to sound almost elementary, common sense, logic. But it's amazing how when you're in your boat, in your kayak, in your waders, how your brain's thinking about so many things, you forget about the simple things. So let's talk about sunlight and temperature. Sunlight and temperature really makes this an easy thing to figure out for this December bite. It really does. If it's sunny and it feels like it's warming a bit, just fish shallow. What's going to be shallow? Redfish. Redfish are going to be shallow. They're going to be on those mud flats. So go up there. You might even get lucky and get to encounter a giant gator trout that's up there trying to eat the same things, or probably a larger mullet that's gone wayward from the rest of the bunch. But that is what you want to do. If it's cloudy and cold and you're still wearing your jacket at lunchtime, don't go shallow. Just don't. I mean, when it's sunny, that degree or two that's a little bit warmer means a lot. But if it starts out cold and stays cold, fish deep, stay deep the whole day. Fish for trout. You'll probably still manage a redfish or 2 or 3. They might not be the size you want, but you will catch trout. Fish deep, stay deep. That's the lesson here. Let's talk about something else that's pretty obvious. December tides. If you've been fishing for any length of time at all, and you've got a little bit of experience under your belt, you know that the high tides in the winter are like the low tides in the summer. They're not super high. They're enough. When you get low water, it's low. It's like, oh my goodness, we're locked into this creek. Oh, we can't get off this flat. It makes you nervous. You usually chicken out. But I'm going to tell you the best tides to fish. That mid-incoming or that mid-outgoing, where the water's in between and there's a little bit of movement. So if your high's here and your low's here and there's about 2 foot of difference in there, that part right there in the middle allows you to fish for everything. Because the fish, based off where that sun is it sunny or is it cloudy and cold, will tell you what you need to do or what you need to know at that point. For me, when I see that mid-incoming or mid-outgoing, I know the fish are still predictable. They're still in spots I can get to. When you have low tides in the wintertime, you can tell where all the holes are, all the travel lanes that they use to get back into other zones, even if there's birds walking around back there, you can see everything. In the old days, before all these satellite charts that came out, we could literally just go out on the low tide days and just mark spots that we wanted to fish in the future. We did it all the time. It was kind of a scouting thing that we did in the wintertime, and it helped us all year long. We knew the egresses and ingresses to every zone. So mid-incoming and mid-outgoing, you can kind of fish for everything. Black drum, redfish, speckled trout, flounder, because you got some moving water. You got a little bit of current. Extreme low water. I hate to admit it, my favorite tide. Does it cost me big time? Am I getting chips in the old Hell's Bay outside? Absolutely. I'm putting some scars on it, some scratches on it. Are there times when I got to actually get out of the boat and push it into some of the zones? We call these little haul over zones to get it a little further back. I do, but the absolute unbelievable, amazing sight fishing happens on that extreme low water. You will be able to sight fish reds like you've never done it before. You just can't be scared. You gotta just go for it. If you go for it on those super lows, I'm telling you, some of the fishing that you can do, especially on those sunny afternoons where you get that little degree or 2 degrees warmer water, boom! I mean, you can hammer them. All right, another thing or two and then we'll get you out of class. Signs of life. Bait. There's no concentrations this time of year. There just isn't. You're not going to see that. You're going to think that you're in a dead zone all the time. You're just going to think that, especially if you don't know what to look for, okay? So you're going to think you're in some barren part of bottom and there's nothing there. Pilchards have left, big mullet have left to go spawn. You're just not seeing much of anything. There's no pinfish. There's just nothing. Every once in a while, you see a little mahara in the back, or you see a mud minnows, like a little group of mud minnows. You'll see tiny shrimp. You know, I say tiny, under 3 inches. That's why I throw that prawn stars. I'm just telling you, it works. You might see some glass minnows in some deeper holes or something like that, because they stay toward the bottom, and then later in the day they'll come to the surface for a little bit. You'll see them. But there's no obvious signs of life. So you have to fish. You have to look. Here's a few signs that you might not think about or you might not notice, but it will tell you if you're getting close to the honey hole. Flicks. When I say flicks, you'll hear that little flick, or you'll see that flick going down a bank. That's a shrimp getting out of the way of something. It's usually a redfish that's cruising the bank, or he came by a zone or was getting washed by a zone, and a redfish kind of washed up, or a trout came off a hole or something and it flicked. If you see that, fish it. It means bait exists there, or it's coming by that point and you should be fishing it. Bait wakes. You know those tiny little wakes that you see? There's like, oh, there's some, that's got to be a finger mullet or something. It's nothing. You blow those off in spring, summer, and fall. But this time of year, those tiny or smaller bait wakes, they mean something. There's bait fish there. There's bait fish there. There's probably trout there. There's probably redfish there. There's probably flounder there. You gotta pay attention to that. If you see crabs up on the low, you know, on the mud banks in the creek or something like that, and you see a couple of crabs scurrying around, good zone. Hang around a little bit. Pay attention. If you got a dried out flat and there's birds on it, that's a good place to return as that water comes back up on the sunny days. On the sunny days. Because what happens is when that water retreats and those single organisms up there that don't live for very long, they get dried out for hours at a time, they die. When the water returns, there's an odor of death in the water. And fish that seek that out are number 1, black drum, and number 2, redfish. They're going to be up there looking to eat all the goodies that died during the last tide. So that's a good sign. And believe it or not, dolphins. If you see dolphins working a deeper creek bend or a creek mouth or something like that, I guarantee you in December, there's speckled trout there. Fish it. Don't worry that they're there. They're going to leave. They're usually only there for a few minutes. You can hang out and you can catch some fish, because fish have a very short memory. So let's review a few things before we call it a class. Fish smart. Fish slow. You have to fish smart this time of year. Understand what you're looking at. What are the ambient conditions in regards to sunlight, in regards to water temperature, available forage that you can now notice and see. Are you seeing anything? Are you seeing those signs of the dust-offs of fish that you are pushing out of the way? Fish slow. Don't get in a hurry in December. This is the first month where things start acting a lot like the frigid winter of January and February. And that depends on where you live. Use the sun to your advantage, or lack of. Remember, if it's sunny, you can start moving shallow. If it's cloudy and it's cold, you just stay deep. It's simple. Very, very simple. Reds and trout are the most predictable in December. You know that. I told you that reds are going to be in those creek mouths. They're going to be in those deeper bends, and that's early on. But if that sun comes out and comes up and gets high, and you notice that the air temperature and water temperature are going to come up a degree or two, and you can find that shallow mud flat, you can find those oyster zones around the mouth of a creek, you are going to be able to do some epic sight fishing, especially on those lower tides. Trout, very predictable. They're gonna wanna be deep. They're just gonna wanna be deep, period. Even in the sun, they'll come up on the edge of the flat, but they're not really gonna move on that flat in big numbers until you have a really good warm up. So fish the creek mouths, fish the deeper residential canals, fish the intercoastal waterway, fish slow, make bottom contact. All those we covered in this. If you enjoy this type of content that I'm providing for you, then you'd really enjoy my inshore online fishing school, FlatsClassUniversity.com. There, I drill way deeper into subjects like that in long course material, chalk talks, diagrams, tables, breakdowns. Plus, you get a 15% discount on tackle from my tackle affiliate, SodiumUSA.com. Doesn't get any better than that. All right, that's all I've got for you today. I'll see you right back here tomorrow with another great professional fishing tip.